Welcome back, guys, to Battleground Stories. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. Thank you. In November 1982, at 3:40 a.m., the call came in. I had just completed half of the maintenance checks on the radar array at Elmendorf when the duty officer told me to report immediately. The NORAD patrol had gone silent on the Kenai Peninsula, 40 miles from the nearest outpost. The last communication had been 12 hours earlier. I was being sent with a rescue team to find them. I'm retired now, but every time the fog rolls in, I still see that night in the Kenai woods. The echoes of voices among the pine trees. The diesel fumes mingling with something older, something that shouldn't have been there. Before I begin this story, if you find these accounts interesting, please hit the subscribe button. It helps more than you might think. My name is Sergeant Thomas Reed. I'd done 2 tours in Vietnam before transferring to NORAD operations in Alaska. The cold suited me better than the jungle. Less noise, fewer surprises. Or so I thought until that November. The missing patrol was Echo Team, 4 men running a mobile radar unit as part of the early warning system. Routine work, checking for Soviet incursions, maintaining the invisible wall across the Arctic. They'd been stationed at a temporary site deep in the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge, testing new equipment that could supposedly detect low-altitude flights through mountain valleys. Captain Morrison spread a topographic map across the briefing room table, his finger tracing a line through dense forest. Echo Team's last position was here, he said, tapping a spot marked only by elevation lines. No settlements for 40 miles. They'd reported equipment malfunction at 1500 hours yesterday. Their AN/FPS-117 radar was showing false returns, hundreds of them. The telemetry data showed objects at impossible altitudes, velocities that changed without acceleration. The patterns had intelligence behind them, purposeful movement responding to the radar sweeps. Standard check-ins came every 4 hours until 2100. Cole's last transmission mentioned switching to backup generators. Then nothing. Weather wasn't a factor. Clear skies, temperature just below freezing. Their generator had fuel for a week. The only unusual note in their last transmission was a mention of atmospheric interference. The operator, Lieutenant Harlan Cole, had said the radar was picking up returns that didn't match any known aircraft signature. Moving too slow for planes, too fast for weather balloons. Then he'd signed off normally. Echo Team, standing by. I was assigned 2 men for the recovery. Corporal Donovan McCready, a field tech who'd served with me in Da Nang back in '71. He knew every piece of equipment we had. The other was Private First Class Rodriguez, 6 months out of radar school. We loaded a 2.5 truck with emergency supplies, medical kit, portable comms, and extra ammunition. Morrison had given me a look when I'd requisitioned the extra magazines, but hadn't argued. The drive from Elmendorf took 6 hours through deteriorating roads. Mac drove while I navigated. Rodriguez monitored the radio from the back. Every 10 minutes. Echo Team, this is Recovery 1. Please respond, over. Only static came back, but with a pattern. Rodriguez noticed it. Sergeant, the static intensifies every 43 seconds for about 3 seconds. He was right. 43 seconds. Not a natural interval. This was deliberate. The forest closed in around us as we climbed into the hills. Sitka spruce and western hemlock, some older than the United States itself. The locals called this area the Whispering Pines. At our last fuel stop, an old Denakina woman had watched us fuel up. When she saw our uniforms, her face went tight. "You military boys never listen," she'd said. "That forest remembers everything. Sometimes it gives it back." Rodriguez caught some of her muttering in her native language. Something about tall walkers and those who speak with borrowed tongues. The station clerk had gone pale when we asked about it. "Just be careful," he'd said. "Hunters go missing up there every few years. When they come back, if they come back, they talk nonsense about giants and voices that aren't quite right." We reached the last marked waypoint at 1800 hours. From there, we had to follow Echo Team's tire tracks through unmarked trails. The tracks were clear in the frost-covered ground, dual wheels from their communications truck cutting deep grooves. But something was off. Every few hundred yards, the tracks would swerve sharply, like the driver had yanked the wheel to avoid something. But there was nothing to avoid. No rocks, no fallen trees, just empty forest floor. Mac noticed it first. "Look at this," he said, stopping the Humvee. He pointed to a section where the tracks curved hard left, then corrected. "See the spacing?" They were moving fast here. Too fast for this terrain. He was right. The tire marks showed acceleration through turns that should have required crawling speed. Either they were running from something or toward something. The sun was setting when we found their first equipment cache. A portable antenna array, still assembled but abandoned beside the trail. No damage, no signs of struggle. The power cable ran 50 feet into the woods before ending at a field battery, still charged. Rodriguez checked the frequency settings. Everything was configured correctly, but when he powered it on, the speakers erupted with feedback so loud we had to cover our ears. Not normal static, but a pulsing rhythm like breathing through a radio mic. I ordered him to shut it down. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. That's when we heard it for the first time. A distant echo of our own radio calls, but delayed and distorted. "Echo Team, this is Recovery 1. Please respond." The words were ours, but the voice wasn't Rodriguez. It was older, raspier, like someone with damaged vocal cords trying to mimic the pattern. Mac grabbed his rifle. "That's coming from ahead of us," he said. I agreed. The sound had direction, maybe half a mile through the trees. We decided to continue on foot, leaving Rodriguez with the vehicle and orders to maintain radio contact every 15 minutes. The forest floor was soft, with decades of fallen needles. Our boots made almost no sound, but I could hear our breathing, harsh in the cold air. The smell of pine sap mixed with something else, something organic and wrong, like diesel fuel and rotting meat. Mac noticed it too. He'd stopped smoking an hour ago, said the cigarettes tasted off out here. We followed the tire tracks by flashlight. They led to a clearing where Echo Team had set up their main camp. The communications truck sat in the center, doors open, engine off. A field kitchen was still assembled. 4 MRE packets opened on the table, food half-eaten. Coffee in metal cups, frozen solid. The diesel generator hummed steadily, powering strings of work lights that cast everything in harsh white glare. But Echo Team was gone. I checked the truck while Mac secured the perimeter. The radar equipment was still running, the screen showing returns that made no sense. Solid objects appearing and disappearing, moving in patterns that violated physics. Straight lines that suddenly reversed, altitude readings that showed targets underground. The computer kept trying to classify them. Unknown, unknown, unknown. The radio crackled. Rodriguez's voice, tight with fear. "Sergeant, you need to hear this." Then he played back a recording from the truck's communication log. It was Lieutenant Cole's voice, time-stamped from the previous night. 21:30 hours. "We're observing multiple anomalous returns. They're not aircraft. They're not weather. They're responding to our scans. Every time we ping, they ping back, but stronger. Harrison thinks it's equipment malfunction, but I've seen this pattern before. In the old reports, the ones from 71. Command, if you're receiving this, we're following Protocol 7. We're going to investigate the source. Grid reference follows. The coordinates he listed were 3 miles deeper into the forest, toward the old growth areas where no trails existed. Protocol 7 was something I'd only heard about in briefings. It meant potential contact with unidentified technology. It meant radio silence until confirmation. It meant they'd found something that wasn't supposed to be there. Mac returned from his perimeter check. His face paled despite the cold. "Reed," he said quietly, "you need to see this." He led me to the edge of the clearing where the ground was churned up. Not tire tracks, but footprints. Huge ones, maybe 18 inches long, with a stride that suggested something over 7 feet tall. They circled the camp multiple times, overlapping, like whatever made them had been watching for hours. The prints led in the same direction as Cole's coordinates. I made the call. We'd follow the trail until midnight, then reassess. Mac disagreed, but didn't argue. We both knew those men wouldn't have abandoned their post without reason. Something had made them leave everything behind and walk into the forest. That something had left tracks that weren't quite human. As we prepared to move out, the radio gave that breathing sound again. Then a voice, clear as if standing beside us. Echo Team, standing by. It was Cole's voice, but wrong. The cadence was perfect, the words exact, but there was no life in it, like a recording played through a throat that had forgotten how to speak. Rodriguez called in, panic evident. "Sergeant, I'm getting multiple heat signatures on the portable scanner. They're moving toward your position. 8, maybe 9 contacts. Body temperature reads at 106 degrees. That's not possible for humans. 106 degrees. Human body temperature severe enough to cause brain damage. But these things were moving, coordinated, surrounding us. Mac checked his rifle, chambered a round. I did the same. The forest had gone completely silent. No wind, no animals, not even our own breathing seemed to make sound. Then, from 3 different directions, we heard it. "Echo Team, this is Recovery 1, please respond." Our own words thrown back at us from the darkness. We formed a defensive position, back to back, rifles raised, scanning the tree line. Mac's breathing was steady beside me. Combat veteran control. The radio calls continued, our words bouncing from different directions like a broken echo chamber. "Rodriguez, maintain position," I ordered through the handset. "Roger that, Sergeant. I've got eyes on 15 heat signatures, body temp reading 106 to 107. That's fatal hyperthermia levels." The signatures held 50 meters out, circling us. Waiting. The smell had intensified. Diesel, decay, and something sulfurous. Mac whispered, "Movement, 2 o'clock." A shape separated from the darkness, 9 feet tall, moving with a loping gait that covered impossible ground. It stopped at the edge of the light. The proportions were wrong. Arms too long, torso caved inward, head tilted at an unnatural angle. It swayed slightly, then spoke. "Standing by." Cole's voice, perfect, including his Texas drawl. But the throat didn't move right when the words emerged. Mac's rifle swung toward it. "Don't fire unless it advances," I ordered. The figure tilted its head past human limits. Others emerged, 8 of them, each uniquely distorted. They moved independently but synchronized, like a shared consciousness. One held a radio handset, raising it with too many fingers. Cole's voice again. "We're observing multiple anomalous returns." Then silence. "They're mimicking," Mac breathed. I keyed my radio. "This is Sergeant Reed. We're looking for Echo Team. 4 men. Have you seen them?" All figures raised their heads simultaneously. From deeper in the forest came a thrumming, subsonic, resonating in my chest. The work lights flickered, then blazed. In that moment, I saw them clearly. Their faces were approximations, eyes in wrong places, mouths that didn't close, skin like bark mixed with scar tissue. But intelligent, calculating, learning. The tallest stepped forward. Mac's finger found his trigger. It stopped and saluted. Perfect military form. Then it spoke in a voice like grinding gravel. "Follow." It turned and walked away. The others watched us with those wrong faces, some practicing speech sounds. "Reed," Mac said quietly. "We need to leave. Now." Rodriguez, we're moving deeper. 1 hour, no contact. Return to base and report everything. Tell them the 1971 protocols have been breached." "What protocols, Sergeant?" "Morrison will know." Mac looked at me. "This is insane, Reed." "Yeah," I agreed. But those are our guys out there. We followed the tall figure, keeping 20 meters distance. The other creatures flanked us, but didn't close in. They moved through the forest with unnatural quiet, their long limbs navigating obstacles without disturbing a single branch. Our boots crunched on frost and needles, clumsy by comparison. The terrain grew steeper. We were climbing into the hills, following game trails that shouldn't have been able to accommodate things that size. The smell grew stronger, mixed now with something sulfurous, volcanic. Alaska had plenty of geothermal activity, but not here, not according to any geological survey. After 30 minutes of climbing, we emerged into another clearing. This one was different, older. The trees here were massive, ancient growth that had never seen logging. In the center was something that shouldn't exist, a structure made of fitted stones, weathered by centuries but still standing. It looked like a foundation, maybe 40 feet across, with what might have been stairs leading down into darkness. Around it were more of the creatures, dozens of them, all sizes, some even taller than our guide. And among them, sitting on the ground in a rough circle, were 4 men in military fatigues. Echo Team. They were alive, but wrong. Their eyes were staring at nothing, breathing in perfect unison. That same low thrumming came from them, from their throats, like they were humming at a frequency below human hearing. Lieutenant Cole sat among them, his hands resting on his knees, his expression blank. Our guide pointed at them, then at the stone structure. "They learn," it said in that grinding voice. "We learn." "Exchange." Mac raised his rifle. "Let them go." The creature tilted its head. "Cannot." They called. We answered. As before. As always. "Before?" I asked. It moved closer, and I fought the urge to step back. This close, I could see its skin wasn't skin at all, but something that looked almost like bark, rough and deeply grooved. It smelled of earth and age and that persistent diesel scent that made no sense. "Your kind comes, sets up the calling machines." It gestured at our equipment. "We answer, we learn, you learn, then you forget, always forget." The 1971 reports Cole had mentioned. There had been incidents before, patrols going missing, found days later with no memory of events, equipment malfunctions that couldn't be explained. All of it classified, buried in files that only officers with certain clearances could access. "They're not harmed," the creature continued. "They teach us. We teach them, but the teaching changes them, makes them between." I looked at Echo Team again. They hadn't moved, hadn't acknowledged our presence. The thrumming continued, and now I could hear something in it. Patterns. Information transmitted at frequencies humans weren't meant to process. "How long?" I asked. 3 days, maybe 4. Then they return. They forget. It is the agreement. "What agreement?" "With who?" But it had already turned away, moving toward the structure. The other creatures began to disperse, melting back into the forest. Only a few remained, watching us with those unsettling faces. Mac kept his rifle raised, but I knew it was useless. We were outnumbered, in their territory, and they'd shown no actual hostility. I approached Cole slowly. His eyes tracked to me, but showed no recognition. When I touched his shoulder, his skin was hot, exactly 106 degrees according to my field thermometer. His pulse was steady but too slow, maybe 30 beats per minute. "Cole, it's Reed. Can you hear me?" His mouth moved, and that thrumming grew louder. Then words, but not in his voice, in many voices, overlapped and ancient. "We remember when the ice came. We remember when it left. We adapted. We learned. Now you come with your signals, your invisible walls in the sky. We must learn these too. It is survival." "What are you?" Mac demanded. Cole's head turned to him with mechanical precision. "We are the Tornet. The first people. The tall ones your ancestors feared. We retreated when you grew numerous, into the deep places, the cold places. But your signals wake us. Your radar touches us even in the earth. So we must understand. We must adapt again. The implications hit me. These things, these Tornit, weren't invaders or monsters. They were older than us, indigenous in a way we couldn't comprehend. And our technology, our defense systems, were disturbing something that had been hiding for centuries. I stood there in that primordial clearing, staring at my possessed lieutenant, trying to process what I was hearing. The Tornit. I'd heard that name before, whispered by native elders at trading posts, dismissed as mythology by anyone with a modern education. But mythology doesn't leave 18-inch footprints or speak through the mouths of trained soldiers. My grandfather had been stationed in Alaska during World War II, building the Alaska Highway. He'd told me stories when I was young, after whiskeys loosened his tongue. Stories about construction crews seeing tall figures in tree lines, equipment that would vanish, then reappear modified. Workers who'd disappear for days, returning with no memory, speaking unknown languages. The Army blamed isolation psychosis, but my grandfather's journal repeated one word: Tornit. Mac kept Rodriguez updated while tracking heat signatures. Yeah, 43 now, some showing underground. How am I getting readings below ground level? Rodriguez asked, voice tight with controlled panic. Good soldier. Still analyzing through his fear. We were surrounded, but I understood it wasn't a trap. It was containment, a boundary. They were keeping us in, maybe keeping something else out. The thrumming from Echo Team harmonized into something almost musical at frequencies that physically hurt. I watched Cole's eyes roll back, blood vessels in the sclera forming patterns like ancient writing. When his eyes cleared, recognition fought through. Reed. His voice was hoarse, damaged. Jesus Christ, Reed, you have to understand. They're not hostile. They're desperate. The radar, our radar, it's killing them. The frequencies, the electromagnetic pulses, it's like being burned alive for them. They had to learn, had to adapt. Then the thrumming resumed stronger, and Cole vanished back into that shared consciousness. When he spoke again, it was in that multi-layered ancient voice. We remember the ice. We remember the sun returning. We remember when your kind were few, when you feared the dark, and we were the dark. Now you fill the air with invisible fire, and we must change or die. An ancient Tornit approached. Its skin wasn't skin, but something geological. Fossilized bark that still grew. Every movement produced grinding stone sounds. It carried a bundle wrapped in color-shifting hide that belonged to no known animal. It unwrapped the bundle ceremonially. Inside, military equipment from different eras. A Vietnam-era PRC-77 radio, a World War II SCR-300, a Civil War telegraph key. But mixed among them were older artifacts. A Spanish conquistador's helmet, twisted as if something had tried to reshape it. Native American trade beads fused by impossible heat. Russian Orthodox crosses bent into spirals. Arrowheads made from metals that shouldn't have existed in pre-Columbian America. At the bottom, wrapped separately, photographs on yellowed paper and glass plates. Military units posed at the same stone structure across decades. Union soldiers from the Civil War, Rough Riders, World War I doughboys. Each showed soldiers with 1,000-yard stares that weren't from combat. In the margins, barely visible, tall shapes. The Tornit, always watching. In one 1917 photograph, words carved in a tree. They learn from us, we learn from them, the agreement holds. The ancient pointed at the photos with a finger that had too many joints. Always the same. You come, you call to the sky with invisible signals. We must answer, must learn. Your wars change, but the calling remains. First, telegraph wires singing in wind, then radio waves. Now radar. Each burns us more, forces us deeper, but we adapt. We must. These men all survived, I asked. The creature's face shifted into what might have been regret. Most survived. Most forgot. The agreement holds. 3 days of learning, neural integration, then release, then forgetting. Your kind always forgets because remembering would break your world. I studied the photos carefully. Each had gaps in formation. A 1943 squad photo should have shown 12 men. There were 8. The missing spaces were blurred, as if removed after the photo was taken. Not all of them returned. The thrumming grew louder. All the Tornid turned toward us. The ancient made a sound like grinding stone and creaking wood attempting a sigh. Some choose to stay. Some learn too much. Some become between, neither yours nor ours. The deep earth takes them, keeps them, uses them as bridges. Through them, we understand your technology. Through them, your technology understands us. Uses them? Mac approached, rifle lowered but ready. You mean they're still alive? Alive, not alive, between. Time moves differently in the deep places. A day above is a year below. A year above is a moment below. They teach us in their dreams. We sustain them with our thoughts. Symbiosis. Necessary. The ancient beckoned us toward the stone structure. The stairs were carved from single stone blocks fused by impossible heat. Descending, the walls began glowing with phosphorescent light, not electrical or chemical, but something else entirely. The diesel smell was overwhelming. At the bottom, a chamber of salvaged military equipment spanning decades, but integrated, transformed. Vacuum tubes grew like mushrooms from circuit boards. Copper wires had become veins, pulsing with not quite electricity. Radio transmitters connected to organic-looking structures that translated electromagnetic radiation into something the Tornid could process. We learn, the Tornid said simply. Your technology speaks to the sky. We must understand it to hide from it, to survive it. Every signal burns us. Every radar sweep is agony. But through the merged ones, we interpret the pain, make it meaningful, make it survivable. In the chamber's center, a dozen alcoves carved into rock, each containing a human form. Soldiers from different eras, preserved but wrong. Bark-textured skin in places, eyes with multiple pupils tracking our movement, breathing synchronized with the thrumming. One wore Korean War corporal stripes. Name tape, Harrison. Not our Harrison, but maybe a relative. How many families had lost people here across generations? The ones who chose to stay, the ancient explained. They sleep between, not dead, not alive, holding knowledge we need, teaching even in silence. Their neurons merged with our consciousness. Their memories became our understanding. I approached the nearest alcove. The soldier inside looked 19, uniform from the 1940s, 173rd Airborne. His eyes tracked to me, mouth moving soundlessly. I read his lips. Help me. Then his expression changed, peaceful. I am helping. I am necessary. The agreement holds. My blood ran cold. These weren't just casualties. They were living archives. Human hard drives storing information for creatures trying to understand our technology. I thought of Cole and his men upstairs, 3 days into their exchange. How close were they to choosing this fate? Release them, I said. All of them. Now. The Tornid tilted its massive head. Cannot release the old ones. Too long between. Would die in your world. But the new ones. It gestured upward. 3 days complete at sunrise. Then they go. They forget. The agreement holds. What agreement? I demanded again. Who made this deal? The creature moved to one of the alcoves, touching the glass-like surface that protected the sleeping soldier. The uniform was from the 1940s, complete with Manhattan Project patches. Your secret keepers, the ones who came after the bright lights in the desert, after you split the atom. They found us, sensing the radiation we naturally produce. They thought us weapons. We showed them otherwise. The agreement: we hide, you forget we exist. When contact happens, 3 days maximum. Then separation. Then forgetting. The Manhattan Project. Black operations from the dawn of the atomic age. Someone in the highest levels of military intelligence had known about the Tornet for 40 years and kept it buried. Mac's voice crackled on my radio. "Reed, we've got movement. Rodriguez reports vehicles approaching, military signatures. They're not responding to hails." The ancient Tornet made that thrumming sound, and immediately the others began moving. "You're forgetting ones come. They will take the new ones. You will go. You will not remember." "Like hell," Mac said, but I grabbed his arm. He looked at me, saw something in my expression, and nodded slowly. We both understood. This wasn't just about Echo Team anymore. This was about something that had been happening for over a century, maybe longer. "We need to get Echo Team out first," I said. Mac's jaw tightened. "Reed, look at them. Really look at them. Those aren't our guys anymore." He was right, partially. As we climbed back to the surface, I studied Echo Team more carefully. Their skin had already begun to change, taking on a subtle texture that wasn't quite human. Their breathing was too slow, their heart rates too synchronized. Whatever the Tornet were doing to them, it was changing them at a cellular level. The Tornet were already dispersing, fading into the forest with that unnatural silence. Only the Ancient One remained, standing by Echo Team. It watched as the 4 men began stirring, their synchronized breathing breaking apart into individual patterns. The thrumming was fading, but I could still feel it in my bones, like an echo of something vast and alien. Cole gasped, his eyes focusing on me with desperate clarity. "Reed? What? Where? Oh God, I can see them. I can see all of them. Every signal, every frequency. It's beautiful and terrible and..." He tried to stand but collapsed, his legs refusing to support him. "They're in my head, Reed. Not controlling, just sharing. Centuries of memory. Millions of years of evolution compressed into patterns I can almost understand." His body temperature was dropping, the fever breaking, but something else was happening. Where his skin touched the ground, tiny root-like structures had begun to grow, trying to anchor him to the earth. He looked at them in horror and began clawing at them, tearing them away with fingers that bled too dark. "The equipment," Cole mumbled, his voice slipping between his own and something older. "The signatures. They weren't aircraft. They were them, responding to our radar. Every ping we sent out was like a scream to them. They had to answer, had to understand, had to make us understand." "I know," I told him, helping him to his feet. The root-like structures broke away, withering instantly when separated from the earth. "Just move. We're getting you out." Harrison and the others were in similar states, caught between human and something else. Martinez kept speaking in a language that sounded like no earthly tongue, all consonants and harmonics. Briggs's eyes had developed multiple pupils that tracked independently before suddenly snapping back to normal. In the distance, I could hear engines, heavy vehicles, moving without lights. The ancient Tornet made that thrumming sound, and immediately the others began moving with purpose. They weren't fleeing. They were repositioning, preparing. "You're forgetting one's come," it said, and there was something like sadness in that grinding voice. "They will take the new ones. You will go. You will not remember. The agreement holds. It must hold. Without it, there is only war, and we are too few now, too changed, too dependent on understanding what you've become." Mac and I grabbed Cole and Harrison, supporting them as they struggled to walk. Their bodies were fighting the change. human biology rejecting whatever the Tornit had done to them, or tried to do. The other two, Martinez and Briggs, managed to stand on their own, though they moved like drunks, constantly reaching for surfaces that weren't there, responding to sensory input from a different reality. "The files," Cole mumbled. "Reed, there are files. 1971, Operation Tall Walker. They knew. Command has always known. There's a whole division dedicated to managing contact, preventing full integration, maintaining the forgetting. We made it halfway to our original camp when the vehicles arrived. 3 black trucks, no unit markings, no identification. They moved with practiced efficiency, surrounding us without aggression but with clear authority. Men in unmarked uniforms emerged, weapons ready but not quite aimed at us. Their leader, a colonel by his bearing, if not his insignia, surveyed the scene with eyes that had seen this before. Sergeant Reed, Corporal McCready, he knew our names without checking any roster. You've done well. We'll take it from here. Sir, these men need medical attention. They'll receive it. Specialized treatment. We have facilities designed for this specific condition." His tone was final, institutional, the kind of voice that came from decades of containing the uncontainable. "Debrief will be at Elmendorf. Transportation is waiting. They had equipment I'd never seen before. Scanners that clicked like Geiger counters when held near Echo Team. Injectors filled with something that made the men's eyes clear almost instantly, though the horror in those suddenly lucid eyes was worse than the blankness. Whatever they were injecting, it wasn't just medicine. It was something designed to sever connections that shouldn't exist. As they loaded Echo Team into one truck, Cole grabbed my arm with desperate strength. "Don't let them make me forget," he whispered. "The Tornit. They're not enemies. They're refugees. Refugees from our own expansion. They showed me... God, Reed, they showed me what's coming. When the satellites complete their grid, when every inch of Earth is under surveillance, there'll be nowhere left for them to hide. And when cornered animals can't run anymore." A medic injected him with something that made his grip go slack, his eyes unfocus. They loaded him into the truck, and I knew that whatever Corporal Cole had learned in those 3 days would be chemically erased, leaving only dreams and half-memories that would be dismissed as hallucinations. Mac Rodriguez and I were in another truck. As we drove away, I looked back at the forest. For just a moment, through a gap in the trees, I saw them. Dozens of tall shapes among the trees, maybe hundreds, all watching our departure. The Ancient One stood at their front, and even at this distance, I could feel its attention on me specifically. It raised its hand, not a wave, but an acknowledgement, a recognition that I had seen beyond the veil and would remember, regardless of what chemicals they pumped into me. Then the forest swallowed them, and they were gone, leaving only the smell of diesel and earth lingering in the air. The debriefing was thorough and strange. We were interviewed separately for hours, our stories recorded, then played back to us with subtle differences. Details changed, rationalized, normalized. Equipment malfunction became the official story. Electromagnetic anomalies from underground mineral deposits. Echo Team had suffered from carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty generator. We'd rescued them just in time. The colonel who'd retrieved us was there, watching from behind one-way glass I could see him in. His name, I learned from an overheard conversation, was Bradshaw. He'd been running this containment protocol for 15 years, since taking over from his predecessor who'd handled it for 20 years before that. An unbroken chain of command dedicated to maintaining the forgetting. They made us repeat the official version until it felt true. Then came the medications, prescribed for exposure to toxic fumes. Pills that made memories fuzzy, that turned the impossible into dreams. They worked on Mac and Rodriguez. I could see it in their eyes as the days passed, the certainty fading, replaced by doubt and then acceptance of the official story. But they didn't work on me, not completely. Maybe it was because I'd been inside that chamber, breathing in whatever atmospheric compounds the Tornit naturally produced. Maybe it was because the Ancient One had touched my mind in some way during our communication. Or maybe it was just because I'd seen those photographs, those decades of soldiers, and understood that forgetting was a choice, not a requirement. I kept one thing they didn't find. During the chaos, I'd pocketed one of those old photographs, the one from the 1940s. Every night I looked at it, studying those blank faces, the blurred spaces where missing soldiers should have been. Proof that this had happened before would happen again. Mac was transferred to Germany within a week. Rodriguez was promoted and sent to radar school as an instructor, nowhere near Alaska. Echo Team was disbanded, its members reassigned to different bases across the country. Harrison went to Fort Bragg, Martinez to California. Briggs disappeared from all rosters entirely. Medical discharge, the paperwork said, though I never found out what medical condition. Cole was the only one who stayed in Alaska, reassigned to a weather station near Nome, about as far from the Kenai as you could get while still being in state. The official record showed a successful equipment recovery, nothing more. No mention of the stone structure that predated any known human settlement in Alaska. No mention of the Tornit or the soldiers sleeping between worlds in underground chambers. No mention of the photographs showing this had been happening since before Alaska was even a state. But I stayed in Alaska, partially because I couldn't leave, knowing what was out there. Partially because sometimes on foggy nights, when the radio frequencies align just right, I hear them. The thrumming, the borrowed voices, the Tornit, still learning, still adapting, still trying to understand the world we've built above their hidden places. I started doing my own research, found patterns in the missing person reports. Every 3 to 5 years, a cluster of disappearances in the same general areas. Always near old mining sites or abandoned military installations, always during periods of increased electromagnetic activity, new radar installations, communication tower upgrades, satellite testing. I found references in old military files, carefully worded reports that danced around the truth. Indigenous interference was a favorite phrase. Geological anomalies affecting equipment. Personnel experiencing shared hallucinations due to environmental factors. Never the truth, but close enough that someone who knew could read between the lines. I tracked down other survivors, carefully, quietly. A Marine who'd lost 3 days in 1974 near Denali. An Air Force technician whose entire radar station had gone dark for a week in 1969. A Navy SEAL team that had encountered hostile indigenous forces during a training exercise in 1978, though the official report claimed they'd fought a bear. Each had the same story, buried under medications and therapy and official denials. Tall figures that moved wrong, voices that weren't quite right, technology that had been studied, absorbed, integrated. And always, always, the forgetting afterward. The pills, the debriefings, the slow erosion of certainty until even they doubted what they'd experienced. Cole contacted me once, 6 months after the incident. A single letter, postmarked from Nome, but with no return address. Inside, just one line. I still dream about them. In the dreams, they're screaming. I knew what he meant. The radar, our radar, burning them constantly, forcing them deeper underground into pockets of existence that grew smaller each year. We were killing them slowly with our invisible signals, our need to control and monitor everything. And they were adapting, learning, trying to survive in a world that no longer had space for them. The agreement Morrison had mentioned, I finally found traces of it in declassified documents from the early atomic age. When nuclear testing began, certain electromagnetic signatures had been detected that couldn't be explained. Investigation teams had encountered something in the remote testing areas, something that had been there first. something that atomic radiation was affected in ways nobody had predicted. The agreement was simple. They would hide. We would forget they existed. When contact occurred, it would be contained, limited, erased. Both sides would survive by pretending the other didn't exist. It had worked for 40 years, but technology was advancing. Satellites, ground-penetrating radar, electromagnetic surveillance that reached into every corner of the Earth. I've driven past that forest many times since. New fences went up within a month of our mission, warning signs about contaminated ground, restricted access, federal penalties for trespassing. But I know what's really being contained. It's not keeping people out. It's keeping something else in, something that agreed to hide while we agreed to forget. Except I didn't forget. Not completely. The pills didn't work perfectly, or maybe the Tornet changed something in me during those hours in their presence. I remember the heat signatures, the impossible footprints, the voices that weren't quite right. I remember Cole's empty eyes and the ancient machines cobbled together from decades of salvage. I remember the soldiers sleeping between worlds, teaching without words, existing in a space that wasn't life or death, but something else entirely. Most of all, I remember what the Ancient One said as we left. The agreement holds. For now, because what happens when our technology becomes so pervasive that hiding is impossible, when every square inch of Earth is scanned, cataloged, monitored, when there's nowhere left for the old things to retreat, when the invisible fire we broadcast constantly becomes too much for even their adapted biology to withstand, they're still out there, in the deep forests of Alaska, in the places where maps show nothing but white space, learning, adapting, waiting. Every missing hiker, every lost patrol, every equipment malfunction that doesn't quite make sense. I wonder if it's them, still trying to understand us, still trying to survive us. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm monitoring civilian radio channels, old habits die hard, I hear it. A click on frequencies that should be dead. A whisper of words that sound almost human. Echo team, standing by. Over and over, like they're practicing, preparing, learning to be us because being themselves is no longer an option. The fog is rolling in again tonight. It carries that smell, diesel and earth and something older than memory. My radio gives a soft click, then another. A pattern I recognize but pretend I don't. They're out there, just beyond the reach of our lights, just outside our understanding. Still trying to communicate, still trying to survive. The Tornet, the tall ones, the first people who retreated when we spread across their world. They're still learning our language, our technology, our ways of war, and we're still forgetting they exist, because that's the agreement. That's what keeps the peace between worlds that were never meant to intersect. But agreements can be broken. Secrets can be revealed. And someday, when someone else stumbles into those deep woods and finds something impossible, maybe they'll remember this story. Maybe they'll understand that not all mysteries are meant to be solved. Some are meant to be survived, documented, and then carefully, deliberately forgotten. My name is Sergeant Thomas Reed, retired. This happened in November 1982 in the Kenai National Forest, Alaska. The coordinates are real. The stone structure is real. Echo team survived, though none of them remember what truly happened. And the Tornet? They're real too. They're out there right now, in the darkness between the trees, listening to our signals, learning our words, trying to understand the world we've forced them to hide from. In the places where cell towers don't reach, where satellite imagery shows only static, where the old Earth still remembers what was here before we came. If you're ever in those forests and your equipment starts malfunctioning, if you hear your own words echoed back wrong, if you see footprints that are too large to be human, turn back. Report equipment failure. Accept the official explanation. Take the pills they give you. Forget. It's safer that way. For all of us. For them. For the fragile agreement that keeps two incompatible worlds from colliding. The agreement holds. For now. But every year there are more signals, more satellites, more invisible fire filling the air. And every year they're forced deeper into smaller spaces, into places where even their remarkable adaptation might not be enough. I think about those soldiers in the alcoves, sleeping between worlds, teaching without speaking, existing in a state that defies our understanding of life and death. How many more will choose that fate when there's nowhere else to go? How many of us will be needed to bridge the gap between species that should never have met? The radio clicks again. 3 short bursts. Pause. 3 more. An SOS? Or something learning what SOS means? I don't answer. That's not part of the agreement. Not yet.